Just do your thing here, bud. Nobody's any better at this than you are.
That's fine. Take a deep breath.
Give him hell at the end. You like this?
Fight like hell like we do every week. You are the best here.
Brett, be affirmative.
You told me to get on.
Info. Ready. Ready. Go slow. Green, green, green. Lock it down, lock it down. 14.
I'm destroyed, and I just got drove through like 6 times on the 14th. What the f*** is he thinking? That is the stupidest thing I've seen in my career. Literally.
Everything you described is accurate. Haven't even finished the second stage yet. Half the field's wrecked.
Hell yeah!
11 got it. Rowdy there, Matt. Good job, pal. Thanks, man. Good job all day. Great work, my man. Great work.
Keep putting yourself in position, we'll win our share, right? We got one back today, brother. Good job.
10-4, great job, guys.
Oh, how's that? That looks like it's working now. Hold on, let me fix the mic. It seems too high. All right, how does that sound? Is it too loud? All right. Welcome back. Racing in the Draft. My name is Mark. As we head to Las Vegas. All right. Let me know if it goes in and out, because I'm getting a couple of weird errors over on my YouTube site. But either way, hopefully this is working. We'll see. I'd really hate to do it again tomorrow. But either way, we head to Vegas. I got you. Good. All right. Awesome. Appreciate that, Wyatt. We head to Vegas for the Pennzoil 400 for the first of 2 races in Vegas. We don't go back until close to the end of the season, but this is the second stop on our very, very abbreviated West Coast swing, since we don't go to Los Angeles anymore, or California Speedway. But before we do, let's look at part 1 of the race on the West Coast at the Phoenix Raceway for the Shriners Children 500, where we saw Christopher Bell get win 3 in a row to start the year out of 4 races. He is on a heater, to say the least. Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson finishing 2nd and 3rd. But will Christopher Bell continue the hot streak and win at Vegas? We'll have to wait and see. Let's take a look at our optimal lineups from Phoenix before we get into Vegas and see how we did last week. It was a tough week. It was really tough to kind of get a real gauge on what the softer tire was going to do. I enjoyed watching the race. I didn't probably end up as well as I wanted to in Draftkings. Lost a little bit, but you can't win every week, or at least I wish I could. But the probability of that's pretty tough. But the optimal lineups from last week in Phoenix: Ryan Preece. Yeah, the option tire definitely allowed for some new names to play up front, and Ryan Preece being one of them. He's he's really good at short track racing to begin with, but we give him the softer option tire, and they utilized it at the right moments and right times, and he got the lead, 34 laps, and had 42 fast laps because that softer optional tire. It definitely decreased the number of Dominator laps that we potentially had seen in the past, but Christopher Bell still led 105 laps, so pretty dominating performance from Christopher Bell, almost as well as he did the previous spring race in Phoenix. We had 5 place differentials, which I kind of somewhat expected. No, sorry, 4 because Joey Logano from 2nd to 13th. So it was 4 place differential. No, it was 5. 11 to 1, 28 to 15, 32 to 7. Yeah, 5 place differentials. But Joey Logano actually lost places and still ended up in the optimal lineup, even at his price tag. So pretty impressive with Joey Logano. But it turned out kind of the way I thought it would. It was going to be 2 very high-priced drivers, 2 kind of middle of the road, middle tier, $7,000 range type driver, and then 2 cheapies, Zane Smith and John Hunter Nemechek, following up in that suit. The other guys that I thought would end up doing well ended up doing pretty well. I mean, William Byron led 83 laps and just missed the optimal lineup, mostly because of pricing more so than anything. I mean, and Joey Logano got him by what? 0.45 looks like, or 0.35 points. So literally 1 fast lap more, and William Byron would have been in the Joey Logano spot for the optimal lineup. Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Chris Buescher, Ross Chastain, all people who we thought would perform fairly well or have a decent amount of place differential. Kyle Busch, another good weekend for Kyle Busch. He has been putting on his typical old self. He just needs to find that victory lane. And as we head to Vegas, his hometown, will Kyle Busch find victory lane this weekend? I mean, I wouldn't call him the favorite, but I wouldn't call him an outside shot either. I think he's kind of in the top 10 of people who I would pick to potentially win the race tomorrow. Our optimal lineup challenge after 4 races, we've got Alex Bowman and Christopher Bell at the top of the heap with 3, John Hunter Nemechek with 2, and a slew. I don't think we've ever had this many drivers after 4 races being the optimal lineup challenge that I like to look at. So, but Christopher Bell and Alex Bowman, and how about John Hunter Nemechek? He's having quite a good start to his year also. All right. Let's head to Vegas, where last year for this race we saw Kyle Larson dominate and win. And in the fall race, we saw the sponsor, Pennzoil, their driver, Joey Logano, win. So those are the 2 drivers from last week, but we're looking more and more concerned about the spring race here in Vegas. This track type is an intermediate D-shaped, or as they call it, a cookie cutter, because they're back in the early 2000s, late 90s, they just made these tracks as fast as they could. I mean, we don't race at Kentucky, which is similar to this. We don't race at Chicagoland anymore, which is similar to this. I'd love to go back to Chicagoland. And then we made California Speedway, or Auto Club Speedway, which was a half mile longer, but still this D-shaped oval. But it became called the cookie cutters because it was just like literally taking a cookie cutter and just putting it in all the different cities that we think that NASCAR thought would do well. And Vegas has stuck around, and for good reason. It's a great entertainment location and always tends to draw a pretty good crowd. And the weather typically is very, very nice in Vegas most times out of the year, unless it was this past Friday, where it was the first time they'd had rain in 212 days or something crazy. But yeah, so Las Vegas, and because of that, and because of being in the desert, and because of the sand, it does get abrasive on this track, and the tire wear will come into play. So, but this track is 1.5 miles in length, 18 to 20 degrees progressive banking in both of the corners. The race length is 267 laps, so slightly fewer laps than last week, but Dominator points will absolutely come into play with 186.9 or 187 points on the table, 66.75 coming from laps led, and 120.5 coming from fast laps. Other tracks that we could compare to, Las Vegas, Kansas, Charlotte, Miami, are all very, very similar. Miami is the little bit of an oddball different, but it is 1.5 miles in length. Super abrasive, progressive banking. We'll see guys ripping the top of the fence here in Vegas. We'll also see them ripping the bottom. And next week when we go to Miami, we'll see something very similar where you'll see the likes of Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick all ripping right next to the wall. And we'll see that tomorrow too. They'll spread this track out and they'll run right along the bottom, right next to the apron, all the way up next to the fence to create speed and find speed differences. Because, of course, at 1.5 miles, 2 miles, and such, we see Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch is going to win. What's up, Mark Fish? Welcome to the chat, buddy. Good seeing you. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button before you leave. I know you're only here for a short time. But I appreciate you tuning in. I raced with Fish and iRacing, so glad he made it in tonight. But yeah, we'll see lots of different lines being taken for Vegas as we get through the race, and they're trying to find speed because of, that's what I was saying before Fish jumped in. Thanks for all the likes, I appreciate it. Is the aero package and being aero tight and not being able to pass if you're following right up behind somebody. So you have to find that different line. You go high, you go low, you go middle, anywhere other than the person you're trying to pass. Optimal laps from our past races here at Vegas, they were all 267 laps, so pretty easy. No real changes in distance for all these races. But as we can see, we've had one dominator, 3 place differentials. We had 4 in the spring. The value picks are only 2 to 3, and we had 4 people finishing in the top 5 for both of these races. So definitely looking for that dominator. Typically, they start up front, they stay up front, and they lead a bunch of laps. Now the question is, which one of our 2 pole sitters or outside pole sitters will do that this time around? Same thing happened in the fall of 2023. Kyle Larson started second, finished first, and William Byron in 2023 started second, finished first. Christopher Bell started first, finished second, and Kyle Larson started second and finished first. Well, Christopher Bell and Kyle Larson are not on the outside or inside pole. But either way, it's very, very similar. It's one dominator. It's mostly finishing positions. Who's going to finish in the top 5 or even top 10? This is not a huge place differential, even though we will have, my guess is probably at least 1 or 2 drivers that will have pretty large place differentials. But we'll get into that when we get to the driver-by-driver breakdown and look at where everyone is starting and lining up. As you can see, this here is the kind of chart I always like to refer to, which is the place differential to finishing positions and all the points they can either get or lose, depending on where they finish. This has nothing to do with any dominator points. It's all place differential. All right, so what are we looking at when we're looking at Vegas in particular? So this is a host of all the different races from the last 4 races here at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and the top 15 Draftkings points participants in each of those races and where they started from. Has nothing to do with who it was or exactly where they started. It was much more, did they start in the top 5? Did they start 6th through 10th? Did they start 11th through 20th? And so on. And we can kind of see from our averages, typically we have 2.2 drivers that start in the top 5 that make the top 15. 6 through 10, we've got 3. 11 through 20, we've got 3.8. And 21 through 30, we've got 4. And starting 31st or worse, we've got 2. Typically, to make it in the 15, at least 1.2 or one of the 2 people on the pole, as we saw in the optimal lineups that we were looking at prior, do finish in the top 15 in points and typically end up being in the optimal lineup. The 15-point average total for DraftKings points is 31.83. Well, if we go back and look at this, we had Kyle Larson with 109. We had William Byron with 116, 110, and 112. So the Dominator is typically very dominant at this track. They lead a ton of laps. They have a ton of fast laps. And it's pretty unrelenting, to say the least. Our winner, even from last year, the optimal from the fall race, which was Joey Logano, only led 6 laps. So if that kind of gives you a hint or clue of what was going on with Joey Logano, and that's all it takes is lead the last lap. I mean, he only had 4 fast laps and 6 laps led, where Christopher Bell almost doubled his point total. by leading 155 laps. But a lot of the same players, as you can see through here, Kyle Larson, William Byron, Bubba Wallace, Ross Chastain, Austin Cindric, all tend to kind of be in this top spot up here. Daniel Suarez is mentioned a couple of times. So yeah, it's the same players almost most times here at Las Vegas. There are a couple drivers that we don't see up there very often, and one of those has got the last starting spot. Ryan Blaney blew out a right rear tire in practice, hit the wall, and they're able to make the repairs. But once you go to the garage with this new I'm not sure what you call it, the new DVP clock, damage fix. Once you go to the garage for repairs and practice, you are not allowed to go back out and qualify. So either make the repairs on pit road and qualify, or go to the garage, make repairs, and do not qualify. Well, Ryan Blaney went to the garage, they made repairs, he did not qualify, so he is starting in the 36th position. Ton of place differential. But as you go back and look, he was not in, I don't think he made any of those optimal lineups. Ryan Blaney, nope. Ryan Blaney was not in the optimal lineups from the last 4 races at Vegas. So just a little something to kind of keep in mind. All right, let's get into our driver-by-driver breakdown, where Christopher Bell is the most expensive driver in Draftkings this week. No surprise there at all. Number one, he's very, very good at Las Vegas, and he's coming off a 3-peat winner. He's won the last 3 races to start this year. When we're comparing a lot of this information, it's from the last 5 races here at Las Vegas. So both of the races in 2024, both the races in 23, and the fall race of 2022. And I didn't fix that from last week. So pretty much the same comparison that we did to Phoenix, but for Vegas, same time frame. Christopher Bell qualified in the 13th place position in qualifying. His practice speeds were 8th in single lap, 28 lap total in practice, and he had the 9th best 10 lap consecutive average. It's 10 consecutive laps without coming in for a pit stop or making adjustments to his car. In the last 5 races at Las Vegas, so this line here that we just talked about, the last 5 races here, Christopher Bell has 3 top 5s, 3 top 10s, 3 top 20s, which pretty much means 60% of the time he is finishing in the top 5. And if he doesn't, he's not having a very good race. He has a 15.2 average finish. He finished second in the last race here, which was the fall race where Joey Logano won, and Christopher Bell did end up leading 105 laps and was the dominant driver for that race. In 10 total starts here at Las Vegas, he does not have a win yet, but has 3 top 5s, 5 top 10s, 5 top 20s, and a 17.4 average finish. Christopher Bell, no, he does not come in ranked first. I did not fix the ranking, so ignore the ranking system this week. Just FYI. Actually, he might be first. Either way, so this is something new now that I am able to access all of the practice lap data. So Ross Chastain was the fastest driver in practice on single lap, 5 lap average, 10 lap average, 15 lap average, 20 lap average. The only one that he was not the fastest was the 25 lap average, and I think it was Austin Cindric who had that spot. So I'm going to compare all drivers to Ross Chastain's time, which is here in this. I'm slightly colorblind, so like a light blue, silverish blue. And then Christopher Bell is the other color here. And this kind of shows the ups and downs of practice and their times. And as you can see, this is actually pretty consistent as we start to get through all the drivers. And that's kind of what I'm looking for, is who had maybe a little bit faster short run speed, who maybe had a little bit better long run speed. Like here, it looks like Ross Chastain had a little bit better fire off speed for the first 3 laps, and then it got kind of even till about lap 17 or 18, and then at this point it looks like Ross had burned up some of his tires, and Christopher Bell then had a little bit faster laps. Now, like a little bit of anomalies like this, where it's almost a half a second difference, almost makes me guess that he had to probably check up or was making a pass around somebody. So usually that's what you see when you see these little spikes of excess time. That usually it's pretty linear on their time, but you can kind of see the wear of the tires throughout even just a 20 lap run. I mean, we started in the low 29-second range, and we ended up finishing in the low 30-second range. So almost a full second fall off over the course of 20 laps. And they'll make 50, 60 lap runs if it stays green the entire time tomorrow. So you can imagine that they'll fall off 2.5, 3 seconds or close to it by the end of the tire run. So just kind of keep that in mind. But this is kind of something new that I've worked hard on this week to try to get a visual graphic display of everyone's practice times. All right, Kyle Larson, 10,500, starting in the 10th position. One of our favorites to win this race potentially, along with Christopher Bell. His practice speeds were actually really, really good. 4th in single lap. He did 30 laps of practice, 6th on the 10-lap consecutive average. Kyle Larson does have 2 wins in the last 5 races here at Las Vegas. 3 top 5, 3 top 5, 3 top 10s, 4 top 20s, a 10th place average finish, and finished 11th in this race in the fall last year. He has 17 total starts, 3 wins total here at Las Vegas, 8 top 5s, 12 top 10s, 15 top 20s, and 9.4 average finish. Let's look at his practice speeds. Very, very consistent and very, very close to what we saw with Ross Chastain. Other than the long run speed, Kyle Larson did look like he had a little bit longer run speed from about lap 20 to lap 26, 27. Now, once again, this one lap here that Ross Chastain kind of poked up on, it's really hard to tell without like sitting in everybody's car and watching on whether this was a slip in a corner or if it was a pass. But either way, Kyle Larson has very, very close to the same amount of speed as Ross Chastain. What's up, family man? What's up, Matt? Hope you're surviving the weather down there. It looked like it stayed a little bit north of you, but it definitely looked like it was quite a bumpy ride in the southern states. So hopefully you survived perfectly fine. Like I said, it looked like it was a little bit east and a little bit north of your location, but either way, it looked like it's still bumpy down there. Still quite a few tornado warnings going on. So if you are in the southern states, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, heading up into South Carolina, North Carolina, definitely make sure that you keep weather aware. And as Ryan Hall says, make sure you're don't be scared, be prepared. I've got Ryan Hall in one of my TVs that I'm watching. For some reason, it locked up. I want it back. I want to see if there's any tornadoes. There it is. Sorry. I got lots of family in Tennessee and down south, so I always like to be aware of what's going on with the weather. Tyler Reddick, 10,200, starting in 14th. It was the Tyler Reddick and Kyle Larson show in the spring race last year. Tyler Reddick in 2311 definitely run this track extremely well. Tyler Reddick is always a potential winner at any of the mile and a halfs we go to, and Vegas is absolutely no different. Even though he does not have a win at Las Vegas yet, I think it'll be only a matter of time before he does get a win. It could be even tomorrow. But at 10,200 starting in the 14th position, that's about where his single lap speed was at 13th. He did 25 laps total of practice and was 4th in the 10-lap consecutive average. So his long run speed also looks to be pretty good. He does have 1 top 5, 3 top 10s, 4 top 20s in the last 5 races here. And he had a god-awful 35th place finish here in the fall of last year. So not a good finish there, which definitely probably brought down his average finish of 13.2. let's look at his practice speeds compared to Ross Chastain's, and really, really close. I mean, even the same linear upward movement here, very close to each other. You could pretty much cover that with a blanket, but you could definitely kind of see. I mean, once again, we're in that 29.2, 29.3 range, and once they finished that 23rd, 24th lap, they're right at the 30.2, 30.3 type range. So very consistent with that 1 second fall off and tire wear. So Ross Chastain, Tyler Reddick, Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, all with very, very similar practice speeds. So no real true, other than the place differential and where they're starting spots, and that's going to be kind of the big indicator with, yeah, we think Kyle Larson can finish up front. We think Christopher Bell can finish up front. We think Tyler Reddick can finish up front. Well, all of them are all starting 10th or worst. So, they definitely have the potential to maybe not lead as many laps and maybe not be as dominant because, we do have an aero issue with this car on these mile-and-a-half style tracks. It's very tough to pass. So your dominator points will definitely come into play along with your place differential. So definitely kind of keep that in mind as you're building these lineups. William Byron, $10,000 on DraftKings, is starting in the 8th position. And as we could see from his practice speeds, he has picked up right where he left off last week and the week prior. He's really, really fast. 3rd on single lap, 2nd in 10-lap consecutive average. He's got an amazing average finish of 7th in the last 5 races here with 1 win, 2 top 5s, 4 top 10s. 4 of the last 5 races he's finished in the top 10, and 5 of the last 5 races he's finished in the top 20. He finished 4th here in the fall race last year. Let's look at his practice speeds. He only ran, which appears to be about 19 total laps in practice. And he started off a little bit on the slow side. Now, whether that was his out lap and he was trying to get into line with somebody or whatnot. So usually the first lap or two, unless it's an absolute clean track, you kind of throw these out. But once we start to compare, he was actually just a tick faster than Ross Chastain after about lap 3. Now, he did quit his run a little bit earlier, but he was definitely showing that he was slightly faster than Ross Chastain in practice. So kind of keep that in mind when you're building it. He's starting in the 8th position. Denny Hamlin at 9,700, starting in the 15th position. So starting a little bit further back. In practice, Denny was not very fast, but when we look at his practice speeds, you'll see something kind of interesting. We'll show that in 1 second. But 28th in single lap, 22nd in 10-lap consecutive average. He's got an 8.4 average finish with only 1 top 5, but 4 top 10s. So pretty consistent with finishing in that 8th position where he finished in the fall race last year. 26 total starts. He does have 1 win here at Vegas and a 12.3 average finish. And as we can see, he ran 37 total laps, or 36 or 37, it's hard to tell. But either way, he ran for almost the entire practice session. And it's kind of hard to say where Ross Chastain was going to end up, but I think the overall long run speed, Denny Hamlin was going to end up probably being faster than Ross Chastain. Now you can see down here, Denny never dropped below the 29.5 second range, just a little bit above, so like 29.6, and where he ended was at about 30.6. So once again, only about a second drop off, but he did that over the course of 30 laps, where most of these others that we were looking at, it's about lap 20 that they kind of reached that mark of a second fall off. So I think the fire off speed from Ross is very quick, where the long run speed with Denny, at least in practice, seems to be much faster. So if we think this is going to be potentially a long run green flag runs, which typically Vegas is, and what we saw in the truck and Xfinity race, in fact, we did not see a caution in the 3rd stage of the Xfinity race today, which was fascinating with the amount of tire fall off that we had. And you've got some people in the Xfinity series that are a little less experienced that end up making mistakes. And Vegas is definitely one of those where a mistake will bite you in a hurry. But really, really quiet and caution free kind of race for both Xfinity and trucks. Really, the trucks only had cautions for rain. There were a couple guys who got, some bent up fenders and stuff, but no real big wrecks in either the Xfinity or the trucks. And that's the scary thing about tomorrow is after watching the sport for, I don't know, 30, 40 years or whatever, and doing Draftkings and betting on it for the last 10 or 12 years, I have always seen the trend that if the truck and Xfinity races are chaotic and lots of wrecks and cautions, the Cup guys kind of go, okay, we're going to show you how it's done, and we're going to have a pretty clean race. Where the inverse happens, if truck and Xfinity are well behaved, typically the Cup guys are like, oh, we can push a little harder, and then it ends up being a wreck fest. I don't know what we're going to get tomorrow. My guess is I think we're probably leaning a little bit on the side of a little bit of a chaotic race, which is a little bit different than what we normally see for Vegas. Usually it runs pretty long and green. So building lineups, it's going to be a little tough. Joe Logano, 9,500, starting in the outside pole position in position number 2. His practice speeds were pretty consistent, 20th in single lap, 19th in 10 laps, so not super fast in practice. In the last 5 races, though, he does have 2 wins here. 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s, 4 top 20s, and 11-point average finish. Those average finishes a little bit less than some of the other guys we've already looked at, but he did win the fall race here last year. 23 total starts. He's got 4 wins. Joe Logano is really, really good at the mile and a halves. Now, the problem is Joe Logano has also had a little bit of a struggle this year with finishing races well. He runs races well. He leads laps and does all the right things, and then ends up either with a pit road issue or he restarts incorrectly or just small mistakes, and they've got to clean that up. And I'm sure they will. The question is, typically with Penske and Joey Logano, usually it's not until the playoffs. So we're a long way from that. But a 9.5 average finish for his total career. And if we look at his practice speeds, the fall off was about the same in the same trajectory. But he was just a little slower than Ross Chastain. Starting a little bit 29.4 and then finishing up at about the same speed. In fact, maybe even a little bit worse than where kind of Ross was projecting to. So starting in second, I mean, that the fall off is going to be about the same, and because of the aero issues and it being tough to pass, people might get around Joey, but Joey also is pretty good here. He doesn't lead a ton of laps, but he ends up having good finishes. And it's tough being on the outside pole on what typically Joey Logano is not a dominator for this race. That's much more of Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick, William Byron type of thing that we see at Las Vegas. Joey Logano ends up finishing these races well, but typically doesn't run them real well, which is a little bit of a tough thought process when you're coming up with Draftkings. So I think I'll probably fade a little bit off of Joe Logano. My guess is he's probably going to end up being 20 to 25% owned. I will probably be closer to 15 to 20% on my ownership with Joe Logano. Not a complete fade, but I'll probably be a little underweight. Now this one's going to be a tough one. Ryan Blaney, 9,300. He is starting in the 36th position because he blew a tire in practice and rubbed into the wall. Don't think it's going to hurt the overall speed of that car, even though speed was not great. He was 29th in single lap, 17th in 10 lap consecutive average. Before he blew that tire, he did end up doing 18 laps of practice. He does only average a 16.4 average finish. The mile and a halves are not great for Ryan Blaney. He does much better at Charlotte, but the other ones, Texas, Kansas, and Las Vegas, are not his best tracks. He's not awful at them, but he's not phenomenal at them. Matt says, do you think we are going to need both Blaney and Chastain in our lineups in the scenario that both finish in the top 10 tomorrow. I don't think Blaney finishes in the top 10. I think because of his starting spot, Blaney's going to be, my guess, somewhere between 55 and 60% owned. And I'm probably going to be 45 to 50% ownership on Ryan Blaney. I am not a full send and I'm not a full fade on Ryan Blaney. It is an absolute coin toss because you got to think he's only going to get place differential. He might have a couple of fast laps, but very doubtful. It's very tough on the mile and a half to have fastest laps in the middle of the pack. Typically, your fast laps are run by your leader. It's clean air. It's just the kind of the nature of the beast. Whereas the super speedways and even some of the short tracks, you can have fast laps that kind of get spread out through the field. Where the mile and a halfs, because of the aero push, really kind of hinder the people in the back of the field. The dirty air really does keep speeds down. So we're looking at two different things here. Do we think at a 9,300 price tag, starting in 36, if you can get to 10th place? Let's see. Where's my little handy dandy chart? So starting in 36 is my favorite chart ever. And let's say he can get 12th. He's not going to have a whole lot of fast laps, but we'll give him 4. And he doesn't lead any laps because it's going to be really tough to get up there. Well, that's 56.8 points. When we go back to this, hope I don't make you guys too busy here. Let's see. We look at our optimal lineups. What does 56.8 get you? Well, that puts you 4th. That puts you 5th, 4th, and 5th in points. So you would need getting up to and finishing in 12th. So that's if you think he's going to finish in 12th. What happens if he finishes in 20th? That takes you down to a 40.8. Well, 40.8 with his price tag would not cut it for the fall 23 race. 40.3 does not cut it for the Vegas. Does not cut it, and it does not cut it with the price tag for any of the races. So literally by missing 8 spots of place differential from 36th to 20th takes him outside of optimal lineup range and probably puts him somewhere between 10th and 15th on total points. So that's the tough part about taking somebody like Ryan Blaney tomorrow is you're going to need him. You got to think that he's going to finish at least 12th or better. Well, if his average place in the next gen era is 16.4 and he's only got 3 top 20s out of those 5 races. I mean, that's a tough hill to climb, to be perfectly honest. I'm not saying it's not possible. Ryan Blaney is easily capable of doing it. Vegas is just not one of his best tracks. Mile and a half are just not some of his best tracks. Other than Charlotte, but we only race there once a year. So, in a 12.6 average finish total, it's even everybody. Your first thought is, 36. I'm putting him in. He's starting dead last. He's Ryan Blaney. He's a champion. Well, it's tough to pass on these mile and a halves, and he doesn't have the best average finish when it comes to Vegas. I'm not saying I won't have him, but I think I will probably be slightly underweight, where I think he's going to be in that 50, 55, or 60% ownership. He will be the highest owned driver tomorrow. I will be underweight. I will be somewhere, probably, one more thing about it, probably 40 to 45%. I'm going to probably fade off slightly of Ryan Blaney. And if we look at his practice speeds before he ended up having that wreck, his speed had improved, and it was very consistent over the course of the 12 or 13 laps before he ended up having the blown tire. And he was actually faster at that point than Ross Chastain was from lap 9 to lap 16 or 17. So, not sure what that means. And like I said, I don't think the damage did much to his car. But anytime you hit the wall, it could definitely screw something up. So, I'm sure he's going to be fine. My guess is he finishes somewhere between 12th and 15th. And if you think that's going to be enough, then put him in your lineups. I'm going to be a slight fade on Ryan Blaney. I've been burned too many times by going, oh, I've got to put this person that's starting dead last, that is a phenomenal race car driver, and then something happens. I mean, all it takes is one blown tire, and once again, his day's done. Now, did they cure the tire issue? Was it just a tire issue, or was it a setup issue that was causing the problem? Was it an air pressure adjustment that wasn't correct? It's hard to say. Or was it a setup problem? And did they cure that setup problem? I don't know. So there is a lot of risk to taking a Ryan Blaney and betting the farm on it. I think it's a pretty good indication that I think he probably ends up in the 12th position, maybe a little bit better. And if that's the case, then you want to have him in your lineups. But all it takes is one slip, one black flag on pit road, one pit road penalty, or as you're trying to come through the field, a Carson Hocevar decides to pull a Carson Hocevar. So yeah, it's gonna be tough. I mean, and we've got Chase Elliott at $9,000, starting in the 16th position. His practice speeds were pretty good, but Chase Elliott's practice speeds have been pretty good all year and last year, and he just ends up kind of finishing where he starts. His average finish here is a 24.5 in the next gen era. He finished 33rd in this race last year, in the fall race last year. 15 total starts. He's only got 3 top 5s and 5 top 10s, and a 19.6 average finish. The next gen era has not been good for Chase Elliott, so kind of keep that in mind when we're building a lineup. Chase Elliott. Now, has he also had really good tracks like last week? He should have performed much better and then ended up performing much worse. Yeah, could that flip on its side? Absolutely. So I'm not saying it's going to be a fade for Chase Elliott, but I'm not completely 100% sold on the Chase Elliott. Kind of like Ty Gibbs. I'm probably going to still continue to be a hold on Ty Gibbs until I see something improve from him. Now, Chase Elliott's practice speeds, I mean, he was slightly slower than Ross Chastain, not too bad, and towards the end, he was probably about equal. So he's about equal, slightly, I mean, we're talking 10th or a half a tenth slower than Ross Chastain, but pretty consistent, and all the Chevys kind of ended up in this ballpark. Most drivers end up in this ballpark, but starting in 16th, sure, there's absolutely some place differential potential there. Kyle Blankenbush, 8,800. I actually enjoyed Kyle Busch in the broadcast today on the CW for the Xfinity race. He was a little bit looser than I thought he was going to be. I usually think Kyle Busch is a little uptight, but he was actually pretty good in the booth today. So I was actually surprised at how well he did. He's very insightful, has a ton of knowledge about the Xfinity series, about racing in general, and it was good to have his thought process up there. It was kind of neat. I'll be interested to see him do more of those. But 8,800, Kyle Busch has been running phenomenally well this year to start the year. It is, if he continues doing what he's doing in the Cup Series, he absolutely will get a win. And, I mean, there's no better place than your home track to go get a win and to break that streak. So I could easily see my buddy Mark Fish with the Kyle Busch pick being absolutely correct in Kyle Busch getting a win and potentially even dominating a ton of laps tomorrow. Out of everybody that's starting in the top 5, I think Kyle Busch is absolutely somebody who could be a surprise dominator for tomorrow's race. I hope Busch is a sneaky tomorrow. Great at Vegas, been good this year. Yeah, absolutely. And I think Kyle Busch could actually end up being sneaky because people are going to look at Joey Logano's win from last year and be like, ooh, I got to take that win. Well, he only led 6 laps. And then you got Christopher Bell, who absolutely wants to get the 4th win. Do you know how tough it is to win 4 in a row? The last time this happened was, 2008 with Jimmy Johnson? That's a long flipping time ago. So it's, number one, it's really hard to get 3 in a row. It's even harder to get 4 in a row. So for Christopher Bell to get a win will be not shocking, but a little surprising. It's just that hard. Kyle Larson is absolutely somebody who is running well right now and is very, very dominant. Before they ever took practice or anything, and I know I'm a Kyle Larson fan, but I would have said Kyle Larson or Christopher Bell would have been my picks. Well, when you start to go up against the narrative of it's really hard to get 4 in a row, not saying it can't be done, but yeah, it's going to be a little bit on the tough side for me to pull the trigger on Christopher Bell. So is it a Kyle or Kyle show tomorrow? I mean, that's kind of more of where I'm leaning towards. And I think the narrative of Kyle Busch getting a win at his home track is definitely there. And he's going to be less owned. So what I was saying before, Joe Logano is going to be pretty heavily owned. Ryan Blaney is going to be heavily owned. Kyle Larson is going to be heavily owned. Christopher Bell is going to be highly owned. William Byron is going to be heavily owned. Well, you've now, all 5 of those drivers are all very expensive. Well, where does that leave Kyle Busch? He gets completely missed. He ends up with probably 10 to 12% ownership. And I think he easily could dominate or win this race. Practice speeds were really good. Let's look at his practice speeds. I mean, he was a tick slower than Ross Chastain. And if you take both of their little spots out where they looks like they had to check up for something, I mean, he's a 10th off, but that's not bad. I mean, he's starting in the 4th position. Being an aero-dependent track, it's tough to pass here. I easily think the Kyle Busch is going to be a sneaky pick. Chase Briscoe, 8,500, starting in the 24th position. His practice speeds were 19th and 20th, single lap and 10 lap consecutive average. His stats are not good. Now, this was an SHR, but SHR has had okay cars at Vegas. They've been sporadic, but I mean, Chase Briscoe, 8 total starts with only 1 top 5, 1 top 10, 2 top 20s, 22.4 average finish. Until Chase Briscoe really starts to gel with this team and really kind of show me something, I'm kind of the only 2 drivers that I'm possibly think that could do well in the Joe Gibbs camp is Denny Hamlin and Christopher Bell. Andrew, what's going on, buddy? You think Bell and Larson are more set up downforce? Both races so far have had drivers come from farther back. Both races this weekend. Yeah, but so the trucks have huge amounts of downforce because of the body shape of a truck. So massive amounts of downforce. You can run pretty much full throttle around Vegas, at least for the first 10 to 15 laps. The Xfinity Series does not have near as much downforce. It's much more of a loose car, but it tightens up on the longer runs. And if you're willing to push it, and also the Xfinity car is not as aero dependent as the Cup car is. The Cup car creates such a wake and has so much more aero dependency on clean air, where the Xfinity car does not. You also have to think the Xfinity car has a much narrower tire. The Cup car has a much wider tire. There's lots of variables that come into it. The Xfinity car has always been more easy to pass with than the Cup car. So it's much tougher to come from the back. So yes, in both races we were able to see, even with fairly clean races, guys make it from the back to the front. Now, and the trucks, there really is only about 8 drivers, maybe 10 drivers that are capable of winning or even finishing in the top 10 week in and week out. And I'd say it's closer to 8. So you've got a very, very top heavy series with trucks. Xfinity is pretty wide open. You've got 20, 22 guys that can win almost on any given weekend. Now there's a handful that are better than most. But I mean, you've got a whole host of really, really good middle to high tier drivers in the Xfinity series. As far as the Cup series, you've got, on any given weekend, you've got 20 guys that can win. And as we're seeing from all these practice laps, now Chase Briscoe's practice laps are not near as good as Ross Chastain's. He has a mishandling car, which is going to be a real problem at Las Vegas. That they're going to be fighting this all day long. But you know, when we look at a Kyle Busch and a Ross Chastain, I mean, their times are, I mean, within tenth and half a tenths on speed. I mean, this is a half a second from this line to this line. It's a full second from here to here. So, I mean, over the course of a run, you're only losing a second, and everybody's losing the same amount equally. So the good cars are going to be good, and it's going to be very, very tough to pass. Andrew says, last year, Penske was trimmed out for qualifying and not good in the race. I think the same happens here. Yes, Penske was absolutely trimmed out for qualifying. We didn't see Ryan Blaney qualify because he couldn't. He was in the garage. We saw Austin Cindric, who we haven't gotten to yet, qualified top 5. We saw Joe Logano qualify top 2. We saw Josh Berry qualify, once again, top 10. So the Penske Fords were absolutely trimmed out completely. And I don't think they're going to race good. I don't have a whole lot of interest in any of the Penske's and or slash Josh Berry tomorrow. I'm much more interested in the Chevys and the Toyotas. So I think it's going to be more their time to shine, which it typically is at Las Vegas. Anyways, I mean, Toyota led the most laps last year in the fall race, and Joey Logano got lucky and ended up taking the win, or happened to be at the right place at the right time. Chase Briscoe just is, they're not set up yet. They're still working some kinks out with, I mean, you also have to think, I mean, even in the 19 car last year, it was a few races that Truex had decent races, but that Truex was not good in the 19 last year or the year prior. Ty Gibbs is struggling beyond belief. Denny Hamlin has been real hit or miss. The only one that's been super consistent and super fast has been Bell. So 2311's been pretty much spot on. But yeah, I mean, you can't have practice speeds. You can't unload and have practice speeds that look like this. I mean, you have almost a 31.5 second lap time. Now, yes, I know there is potential that he had ran into traffic or whatever, but he didn't improve 2 laps later when he ran over a 31-second lap. So, especially that early in a run, it's just something's missing with Briscoe in this track. So I'm going to be afraid if he surprises me. Okay, I'll eat the crow, but I have to go off of the data that is given to me. Practice speeds were very inconsistent and not good. His average finishes have been in the 20s, and he's starting 24th. So all indications is that he isn't going to be very good. Ross Chastain, $8,300, starting in 19th position, was absolutely blistering fast, and single lap, 5 lap, 10 lap, 15 lap, 20 lap, 25 lap, across the board. And he has the best average finish at this track, 6.0. He has a 6.0 average finish and does not have a win. He's just super consistent. And he's fast. So the other fastest person is Austin Cindric. And they follow very similar. So Austin Cindric, yes, I just said before, they're trimmed out for qualifying. But Austin Cindric always finds a way to screw races up. Out of all the Penske's, I would take Austin Cindric before I took any of them. In my opinion, Austin Cindric still is starting too far up for me to really be comfortable. So the Ross Chastain play, I feel, is a little bit better, especially coming from 19th. At least we're getting some place differential if it only makes it up to 7th or 8th and doesn't have a whole lot. Because we also can expect Ross Chastain to lead a lot of laps or have fastest laps. Unless something really weird happens and they're able to get to the front on an early caution. So, not expecting a whole lot there, but yeah, starting in 19th with these. Now, Ross Chastain's going to be super heavily owned. He's probably going to be the second highest owned on the board. Well, maybe third. But he will definitely be top 5 on ownership between Ryan Blaney, Ross Chastain, Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell. I mean, those 4 will be the most highly owned on the group. So, and then Joe Logano will have a decent amount of ownership. But yeah, Ross Chastain, I think he's kind of one of those, you almost have to take him, but you don't have to take him. So I'll have him probably about the same as I do with Ryan Blaney. And I'll only have probably a third of my lineups that have both of them together. How much is too much that we play Chastain tomorrow? I'll probably have about 40% ownership in Ross. And like I said, I'll have him in about a third of those lineups with Blaney. Because I think one of the two have an issue and maybe they finish the race, but you need Ross to finish top 10 starting in 19th. What is that point wise? He's starting in 19th. And we need him to finish in 10th, and that's only 44.8. So realistically, to get up to the 50-point range, we need him to finish at least 7th. So, that's a 12-spot place differential. Now, we needed Ryan Blaney to finish top 15. Both are easily capable of getting up there. Both of them doing it in the same race is a little bit more of an uphill battle. And that's kind of what I'm saying, is you gotta have to. Like I said, I'll have out of 80 lineups, I will run 4 or 5 that have both Ross and Blaney together, along with who I think is going to dominate, which would be like a Bell, Larson, Byron type person. So that's kind of how I'm going to build it. But Austin Cindric's speed actually looked really, really good, even coming in a Ford. We'll get to him in just a minute. Alex Bowman at $8,000, starting in the 6th position, 14th in single lap, 5th in the 10-lap consecutive average. So his long run speed looks to be pretty good, but we'll check that in 1 second. In the last 4 races that he's run out of the 5, he has a 15.3 average finish, so not great on the average finish, and he did have a 5th in the fall of last year, so not bad. And his practice speeds actually were a little bit more, like I said, toss out the first 3 laps because they're a little inconsistent, but we kind of get from lap 3 to lap 23, and Alex Bowman's speeds actually are as good, in my opinion, a little bit better because they're a little bit even more flatter. They're not as ragged. And I really like to see this nice linear line, just nice and smooth, no ups, no downs, just a slight amount of fall off. Really, really good for Alex Bowman. Probably starting in 6. The question is, do I think he's going to be able to get up and lead laps? Because starting in 6, you need fast laps or leading laps for this race. And I'm not sure in 6 that you do that. I mean, we can go back to the chart. I know I beat this to death, but I just like it because it gives a true example. Let's say he finishes in 5th. And it's going to be tough to get fast laps being in the 5th or 6th place spot because of the arrow. That's 41.8 points. Well, that doesn't quite pull it off. That barely cracks the top 15 of Draftkings points. And that's starting up front, staying up front. So realistically, we're going to need to have him move up to 3rd, and that's still only 45 points. let's say he's able to lead 10 laps. That helps. That's 48.3. We really need to get to 50 points. It's just so hard without being a dominator of something and finishing the top 10. Thanks. Yeah, it puts everything in perspective. And what I really need to do is I need to get my Discord channel up and running so I can share this, because it really is, when you're sitting there building your lineups and you're going, do I take driver X or driver B? And you start to play, and if you know the numbers that you're having to try to get to, and tomorrow's number, what you're trying to get to is, can this driver get to 50 Draftkings points? And if not, do I have enough on the high end to make up for that? Because if we go back and look, I hate to drive it crazy. I'll go really fast. So we had, in the fall of last year, 50 points, barely just made the optimal lineup. Now we had a 39.7, but we had $1,700 left over, and we had a $5,500 driver make the optimal lineup at 39.7. We had a 21.9, but if we also look, we had an 11,000, an 8,500, a 9,800, an 8,300, a 7,300, and the 5,100 Ty Dillon made the optimal lineup. I know it's crazy. But everybody else is 50 points or higher. This is a phenomenon that doesn't happen very often. And then down here, we had a 41.5, but everybody else is above 50. So realistically, that's kind of the threshold. You could probably pull the threshold down to 45. So we also look at the top 15 in points. Where was that? Where's my chart for that? There it is. So the 15-point average is 31.8 or better to be in the top 15 in DraftKings points. And that takes everything out of the equation for price and driver. It's literally, how do I get to the top 15 in point total? And it's 31.8 in DraftKings points. Sure, there are a few anomalies where a Ty Dillon gets 21, but because he was so cheap, he ends up making the optimal lineup. But that was 1 out of 4 optimal lineups that we were looking at. So, yeah, I mean, 31.2, a 36, a 29.7, and a 28.45 to be in the top 15. So that's the top third of the drivers. So, yeah, that's why I like knowing where the threshold is and how many points do I need to get to. And yeah, I like Alex Bowman to possibly start up front and stay up front. The problem is it doesn't do me a whole lot of good unless he can lead some laps and have some fast laps. Sure, I think the chances of that are as good as Ryan Blaney starting 36th and finishing 10th. But Ryan Blaney will have, if Ryan Blaney finishes top 10, he'll way outscore Alex Bowman. So I'll probably have, when we talk ownership, I'll probably have 15% ownership on Alex Bowman. It won't be a complete fade, but I won't have a whole lot, just because it takes, I don't think Alex Bowman is going to be one of the drivers that leads a bunch of laps. I think Kyle Busch ends up doing that before Alex Bowman does. So, and then you still have to prove that he's going to beat Christopher Bell, and he's going to beat Kyle Larson, and he's going to be faster than William Byron. 3 of the people that I think easily could probably also all be dominators. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate that. But Alex Bowman's speeds are better than Ross Chastain's, but he's starting further up. So at some point, Ross is going to have to get around Alex Bowman to keep his top 10 consistency up. This track is really, really difficult. And if we're talking about place differential, Bubba Wallace is right there with Ross Chastain. You got Ross Chastain starting in 19th and was first in first. And you have Bubba Wallace starting in 20th, and his speeds were second and third. He's almost as fast as Ross. And he had a lap that he really I think that he was pitting and it just got scored as a lap. I don't know, 31.5. But he was second in speed. And that's probably from here to here that they ended up being really close. But Bubba Wallace is good at 1.5 miles. The problem is he ends up getting himself in trouble. So he's a little bit untrustworthy. And that's where this 20th place average finish comes from. But, I mean, his other win, other than Talladega, came from Kansas, which was a 1.5-mile track. So, do I put a lot of trust in Bubba Wallace? No, I don't trust him very much. Does he have the potential to get up there? Maybe. But once again, this is a tough track to pass at. It's very air dependent. So, can Bubba Wallace get to 10th? Maybe. And once again, you go back to that point chart and you start to go, okay, 10 spots of place differential, finishing in 10th. Probably not going to lead a whole lot of laps. Probably not going to have a lot of fast laps. Is it going to be enough? Well, from 20th to 10th, not leading any laps, 45.8. And if you don't have any fast laps, it's even worse than that. It's 44. 44 points enough at a price tag of $7,800? Maybe. Now, could he finish in 9th or 8th or 7th or 6th? Maybe. So I don't mind Bubba Wallace, but I will probably be somewhere in the 10 to 15% range of ownership. I probably have about as much Bubba Wallace as I do Alex Bowman. It's just a little bit tougher uphill climb, especially starting in 20th. Just a tough spot. Ty Gibbs, I am absolutely out on Ty Gibbs until he proves me wrong. And he's going to have to prove me wrong 2 weeks in a row. He has just been the most inconsistent, unlucky, bad luck, whatever you want to call it. It's awful, and I feel bad for him. He's an Xfinity champion. Everybody thought he was the next Joey Logano, the next Kyle Larson, the next Kyle Busch, and it's just fallen flat. I don't know what's going on. The kid's got a ton of talent and just cannot put 2 and 2 together. It's baffling. But starting in 29th, he could go out and win tomorrow. Stranger things have happened, and I'll let it burn me. But I'm just not willing to take a bet or dive on Ty Gibbs. Now, will I completely fade him? No. Will I have zero ownership? No. Will I have him in 4 lineups? Probably. That's 4 out of 80 lineups. So I won't have him very much, even starting 29th. He's averaging, I think right now, what is his trend line? Let's look at that real quick. So Ty Gibbs trend. Let's see his trend line for the last 10 races for Ty Gibbs. This encompasses the end of last year and the start of this year. He's at a 29.4 average finish for those 10 races. That is worst on the board. Cody Ware has a 24.7. Cole Custer has a 28. Well, that's only 4 races. But out of 10 races, Zane Smith is a 23.2. Ryan Preece is at a 24.2. And Ty Gibbs is at a 29.4. It's 5 spots worse than anybody else that's run the last 10 races. It's bad. Could you show us Gibbs' points if he finishes 20th? Sure. More than happy to. Points. Starting in 29th. And you get to 20th, and you're probably not going to have any fast laps or laps led. So it's 29 points. Not good. You're going to need to at least get to 40. And probably, realistically, you need to get to 50. Oh, hold on. I have a finish of 0. Sorry. 20th. Why did I do that? Sorry. 20th. 32 points. Still not much better. If he can sneak up to 12th, it's 48 points. Well, we're getting kind of close. Maybe if you get all the way up to 12th, maybe you probably have 4 fast laps. That's 50. Okay. Do you think Ty Gibbs will make it to 12th place and have 4 fast laps? I mean, he's more than capable of a driver, but consistently, it's been bad. So, I mean, if he finishes 15th and has 43.8, he's probably not going to have 4 fast laps. I mean, the fast laps are really not spread out like they do even for some of the short tracks. Let's look at the fast laps. The average fast laps at Vegas for the last 5 races. Yeah, I mean, they just fall off. I mean, you have a couple people. I mean, you get 1, 5.5 for Zane, 3, 3.5. Yeah, most of them, I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, your fast lap guys, Christopher Bell, Kyle Larson, 23 or 24 and 32. And nobody else is even close. Let's see. William Byron's at 19.4 on average fast laps at Vegas over the last 5 races. And their average laps led, Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell at 75 and 43, William Byron at 38. So, and then everybody else, 20.6 for Daniel Suarez. Wow. It's a tough hill to climb. I mean, this is a tough track. It's tough to pass. It's the Dominators are dominant. This is a Dominator track. And so at that point, it becomes a little bit of place differential and a little bit of finishing position. The problem is, I just don't think Ty Gibbs is that it. I don't think it's that this week. So, it is practice speeds were. I mean, as you can see, this kind of a little bit of all over the place. It's not as bad as Chase Briscoe, but this is not good. I mean, like I said, we scratched the first 3, and we get to here. It's not great. He gets a little better and a little bit longer they go, but I don't know. It's a little inconsistent. I'm a little miffed by it. Brad Keselowski at 7,500, starting in 27th. I trust Brad Keselowski starting in 27th more than I trust Ty Gibbs starting in 29th. And his average finish is not great, but his average finish over the last 10 races is at least been better than Ty Gibbs. 17.4, 12.7 average finish. And his practice speeds, he had a mishap there, but if we kind of draw a line through that, he kind of follows the same trajectory as Ross. He didn't fire off near as good. I don't know why that got cut off over there, but yeah, I mean, I don't love the Brad play at all, but starting in 27th, we're gonna somebody's going to come from close to the rear. And that'd probably be a Ryan Blaney. I'm just not expecting Ryan Blaney to go and finish top 10. I also expect him to be highly over-owned. So I'm gonna fade off of it. I'll go a little contrarian on it and go somewhere else. And Brad may be somebody that I kind of go towards. Chris Buescher starting 11th spot. I mean, this is kind of where you would think that Denny would, or not that Denny, but Brad would end up finishing. Is going to be close to where his teammate is. Now, Chris Buescher is better at the 1.5-mile tracks than Brad is. On average, not really at Vegas, 18.8 to a 17.4, so they're not too far off from each other. Chris Buescher finished in 10th. His practice speeds were right there in the low teens to 10th. A little inconsistent at the start of the run, but definitely kind of got a little bit more consistent. Still end up being a little slower on the longer bit of the run than Ross. I'd rather fade off of Buescher, who I probably trust more to stay closer to 10th, and I'll take Brad starting in 27th that I think might finish up in 12th. Because your points just end up being different. So 27th, not 7th, 27th. And Shea finishes in 15th. Well, yeah, it's only 40 points, but if we look at starting in 11th and you finish in 12th, well, that's 30 points. So stay where you're at and get 30, or have the place differential. I don't know. I don't love either one of them, but I won't have be full fade on them because we can't just all take Christopher Bell, Kyle Larson, William Byron. You just don't have enough salary cap. Austin Cindric, I think, will probably get overlooked because he's starting too far up and he has a tendency to make some mistakes. And I would much rather take Kyle Busch starting in fourth than Austin Cindric starting in third. But at 7,200, he probably will get overlooked, and guys like Brad Keselowski will have more ownership because people are nervous. Well, 24.2 average finish. It's not a good average finish. 34th in the last race here. So his average finishes are not very good. But his practice speeds stayed very consistent over the course of this long run. I don't mind this at all. In fact, the trajectory on this line looks, I think, in my opinion, one of the better of all the drivers. The problem is he, I think, qualified too far up. So it's a risky play. I like Kyle Busch more than I like Austin Cindric, but Austin Cindric's also $2,000 cheaper. So if we're looking for maybe for Austin Cindric, in my opinion, will be sub 5% owned. Now that's a tough hill to climb because starting third unless he finishes in third. Starting third, finish in third, it's 41 points. Let's say you have 6 fast laps, 43.7 points. That probably is enough at $70. What did I say it was? $7,200. Yeah, $7,200. But you're asking the guy that has an average finish in the 20s to start in third and finish in third. I'm not saying it can't be done, because Austin Cindric has gotten much, much better over the course of the last, 10 races. In fact, let's look at that real quick. What is Austin Cindric's last 10 race average? It's 19.4, so it's not great. But when we start looking at this, Christopher Bell's at a 7.5, and he's won 3 of the last 10 races. 6.1 for William Byron out of the last 10. So 19.4 is not awful. We got a lot of guys that are in the 20s, including Briscoe, Chastain, Gibbs, Keselowski, Suarez. But Austin Cindric's also starting in third. That's the part that scares me. Daniel Suarez, $7,100, starting in 23rd. Average finish of 11th. This track actually is pretty good for Trackhouse. He finished third in the fall race last year. His practice speeds were just a tick off from at the start of this run from Ross. Comes in, I think this looks like a pit stop, or came into pit road, got some adjustments, and he comes back out and he fires off a little bit faster than Ross. They only get one set of tires, so they like he came in and got a new set of tires. He just went in and got a better setup. So when you look at this, this is not a consistent run across the whole time frame. A lot of times these guys are coming in and pitting and making adjustments. But this is the course of the run because the tires are still the same. But after Daniel gets a little bit of adjustment here, you see that he comes out and he's a little bit faster on the same amount of lap tires as Ross. So, where's he starting at? 23rd? I think Daniel Suarez could be a little bit of a sneaky pick because he also has burned some people over the last few weeks. So Daniel Suarez could be pretty quiet, could be kind of sneaky, especially starting in 23rd. Everybody's going to jump to the 27s and the 30s and those types, and at 7,100, I don't mind taking a few shots on Suarez this weekend. Carson Osemart, $7,000, starting in 25th. It's kind of where his average finish is, but it's only a course of 3 races. Carson's practice speeds were, had a tough lap there. If we take that out, though, we just draw this line through here. He's falling pretty consistent. It looks like he came in for a an adjustment and came out and fired off almost a second and a half or half a second faster than where he was and what Ross was. So Carson's one of those that he becomes really sneaky, and especially at 25th. He's one of those that will just hang out and be around all race, and the next thing you know, you'll look up and he'll be running 8th. And you're like, when did that happen? So Carson could be a little bit of a sneaky pick starting in the 25th. So if we're looking for some place differentials and we're trying to stay away from the guys that are starting in the 30s because it just becomes tough, Carson's one of those that, a little bit like Shane Van Gisbergen, he'll just hang around, he'll learn and adjust all day long, and the next thing you know, will be 20 laps to go, and Carson Hocevar and Shane Van Gisbergen will be 8th and 9th. And you're like, when did that happen? And they don't make a whole lot of noise, and it just happens. So 25th to 8th. What does that give us? It probably gives us enough. 25th to 8th. That's with 6 fast laps. We take that down to 1. 53.45 points. 25th to 8th. I think Carson Hocevar gets real sneaky and could easily be in the optimal lineup. I'm just saying. Because you also have to think the pole sitter came out of Spire. And if we look at their laps, they're pretty consistent. I think Carson Hocevar is really a good sneaky pick. So, just my personal opinion. I'll have some ownership there. Noah Gragson, another Las Vegas native, along with Kyle Busch, and there's one more coming up that's also a Las Vegas native. Noah Gragson, 6,900, starting in 21st. He was 6th in fast lap, 12th in 10-lap consecutive average, has a 16.3 average finish. And this is coming out of SHR. So pretty good, consistent finishes for Las Vegas boy, Noah Gragson, starting in 21st. It's a little tough because I think he, along with Carson Hocevar, could sneak their way into a top 10. Problem is, Carson Hocevar's got 4 extra spots on Noah Gragson. But, I mean, once again, I hate going back to this chart, but I love this chart. It's my favorite chart. 21st to 8th, that's 49.5. If we're trying to get to that 45 or 50 point threshold, it's real close. So I definitely like some Noah Gragson. Whoa, his practice speeds were really wonky, and I don't love this. This line's a little all over the place. So that part of it I don't like. I'll be consistent with that. But I still will have some. I'll probably have some ownership in Noah. Austin Dillon at 6,800, starting in 22nd. Don't have a whole lot of practice speeds from him. He was 5th in single lap, but he did not do a 10-lap consecutive average. What's his entire run look like? Ooh, he really spikes up here. Oops. Yeah, he's a little all over the board. But speeds are not bad. Starting in 22nd, I mean, it's one of those. Do you take an Austin Dillon with a 21.6 average finish starting in 22nd, or a Noah Gragson starting in 21st with a 16.3 average? I think I'd stick with Noah Gragson than I will Austin Dillon, but I could see the argument for either one. I think I like Carson Hocevar better, the best out of the 3 of those picks. Josh Berry, I think you outkicked your coverage. I hate to tell you, I think you trimmed your car out for qualifying, and that's what you did. Because your practice speeds were not good. 32nd and 30th in 10-lap consecutive average. Your average finish here is at 24.3. And you just fired off slow. Now, your long-run speed looks a little bit more like Austin Cindric. We'll forgive you for this spike here, because I'm going to forgive Ross Chastain for his spike here. But on that, you're about a half a second slower across the run than Josh Berry. Now, the long run speed looks like probably the trajectory. You look like you might become a little bit faster with the tire wear difference. But starting in 7th, I really would have liked to have seen Josh Berry start more like 22nd or 23rd, then I'd be interested. But starting in 7th, I think you outkicked your coverage. AJ Allmendinger at 6,600. He's actually pretty good at Vegas. 16th place average finish. Which, I mean, I know is not great, but for a road course guy, that's not bad. He's starting in 18th. His practice speeds were 17th and 28th and 10 lap. The problem is he just didn't do a whole lot. A little inconsistent at this beginning. He gets a little more evened out here, but just didn't. He only ran 19 laps. So we don't have a whole lot of data here to go on. So that kind of scares me starting in 18th. I'd rather take the guys that are starting in the 19th, 20, 21, 22 spots. Like I would take probably Austin Dillon more than I would take AJ. Well, no, I think I'd take AJ over Austin Dillon. But that's a real close battle. Justin Haley, 6,500, starting in 33rd. I didn't get a chance to watch qualifying because I was setting up for my Xfinity Draftkings. I don't know why he qualified 33rd, if he pushed up in the corner or what, because his practice speeds were pretty consistent at 16th and 13th. He did 28 total laps. He's got a 17.6 average finish, so I definitely like some Justin Haley. And his line, yeah, he's slower than the fastest guy, but he's starting in 33rd. I don't necessarily need him to be as fast, so I would much rather take a Justin Haley starting in 33rd at 6,500 than a Ty Gibbs starting in 29th, who had much more inconsistent lap times. So yeah, I'll definitely have some ownership in Justin Haley. In fact, I think he might probably be pretty heavily owned. Probably, my guess is probably 18 to 20%. Because so far, that's probably the best other than Ryan Blaney that is starting in the 30 range. Eric Jones at 6,300. I mean, I'm happy to see that Legacy Motor Club is starting to have much more consistent practices, qualifying. Now they just need to translate that into finishing well, because last year they were awful in qualifying, they were awful in practice, and they were awful in the race. Well, it looks like they're starting to get 2 of the 3. And John Hunter Nemechek has started off this year really, really good. Eric Jones, we still have a little bit of room to run here with Eric, but it's not one of his worst tracks. He has an 18.8 average finish, and his practice times, other than this little blip, which we got to look at both of them, we'll take both of those out, he's pretty close to Ross Chastain speed. I mean, maybe a tenth, maybe half a tenth off from Ross, so not awful on speed at all. Starting in 5th, though, really scares me because it's kind of like the Ty Gibbs deal. His average finishes just have not been good. What is Eric Jones' average finish over the last 10 races of 21.5? So not great. And if you're starting in 5th, that scares me. So I'll probably fade off of Eric Jones. Ryan Preece starting in 12th, I think also is starting a little bit too far up. I mean, he's starting one spot worse than Chris Buescher, and I think Chris Buescher is much better, and we don't have the option tire for Ryan Preece to fall back on. So that kind of really has me a little bit worried, and he was just slower in practice. He got a little bit more consistent towards the end here with Ross, but his fire off speed was not great, and I'm sure they made some adjustments, and he's improved. But starting in 12th, I think that's kind of the top end of where Ryan Preece could end up finishing. So not real interested there. Michael McDowell, $6,100. Starting from the pole. What a shame, because I would have liked to probably had some Michael McDowell, but I just don't trust him starting in first, especially when we've got the likes of Kyle Busch, Christopher Bell, Larson, Byron, Joey Logano, all starting not too far from where Michael McDowell is. So I think he's going to get eaten up pretty quickly. I think he's going to fade to the back, and it's just another one of those days. He goes out and he qualifies super well, and he has pretty good practice speeds. In fact, I mean, he fired off really, really well. I don't trust Michael McDowell starting in the top 10. So I just can't trust it. Shane Van Gisbergen, I mean, if you want to talk about somebody that's probably just going to go out, turn laps. He did this in the Xfinity Series time and time again. He would go out, he would run, he'd start off slow, but all of a sudden at the end of the day, you look up and it's like, how is Shane Van Gisbergen 8th, 9th, or 10th? And you go, well, damn, he's got a top 10 finish. He did it all the time last year in the Xfinity Series. I don't know how many, I didn't keep track of all the optimal lineups in the Xfinity Series, but I bet you money Shane Van Gisbergen was either in the optimal or in the top 10 in DraftKings points, and half of the races, oval races last year. Just because he would just stick around and he would learn the track and he would learn how to race it, and he would be there at the end. He would just survive. In fact, I mean, if you look at his practice speeds, he fires off a little slow, gets pretty fast, then slow again. So I think he comes in, gets an adjustment, gets another adjustment, and he comes back out. He's pretty consistent. I mean, his speeds are about the same as Ross by the time the end of the run happens. And he goes out and he runs 32 laps of practice. I mean, it's the third most laps of anybody in practice. So Shane's doing what he's supposed to do and just go out and learn the tracks. Todd Gillen, 5,900, starting in 32nd, 27.6 average finish. His practice speeds were not good at all. He fired off really, really slow. Now, he kind of equalized with Ross here at about lap 15 to lap 19, and then it was done and over. Starting in 32nd, I just don't trust it. The mile and a halves have not been great for Todd Gilliland in the past, so I will probably fade off of Todd Gilliland. Zane Smith outkicked his coverage, in my opinion, starting in the 9th position. His practice speeds were 24th and 23rd. He had a 26th place average finish, and that's with a 16th place finish last fall. Yeah, he just fired off a little slower. He didn't kind of equalize towards the end of it. About the same as Todd Gilliland, both pretty much driving the same car. Saw pretty much the same type of consistency in practice. So I'm going to probably fade off. I think he's starting too far up, in my opinion, for Zane Smith. I'm glad to see he's doing better this year than he did last year, but still just too inconsistent. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. at $5,800, starting in the 31st position. He's got a 23.2 average finish, and his practice speeds were okay. He actually comes in and gets an adjustment, looks like about here, and then fires back off a little bit faster, and then kind of slows up, but is faster than Ross longer on the tires. So, starting in 31st, you could take some shots here, but I think your ceiling with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is probably 20th. And once we saw what Ty Gibbs was going to do by starting in 29th and finishing in 10th. So what is 31st? Not 10th, but 20th. 31st to 20th. Probably going to put you 34.45 points. So 34 points. I mean, at 5,100 or 5,800, we're starting to get close to that equation where we had Ty Gibbs at 5,100 with only 21 DraftKings points make the optimal lineup. I just don't know if Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is trustworthy enough with a mid to low 20th place average finish. So maybe not. Practice speeds were okay. John Hunter Nemechek, I think I would much rather probably take a shot on John Hunter Nemechek starting in 30th at 5,500. 15.5 average finish here at Las Vegas, which one of his better tracks, even when he had his other start before he started in Cup, went back to Xfinity, went to Trucks, came back to Fit, whatever. He dropped back down and came back. He still had a pretty good average finish even back then. His practice speeds were, they were consistently 2-3 tenths slower than Ross, but he's starting in 30th. And his fall off, he actually ended up, they kind of almost crossed paths at about lap 24, 25. This is another one that I think we can all of a sudden at the end of the race look up and go, how's John Hunter Nemechek in 11th place? How did that happen? He could be right there with Shane Van Gisbergen. He could be right there with Carson Hocevar. And he could be right there with Noah Gragson. Where all of a sudden, all four of those drivers are somewhere between 8th and 15th. Well, they all have enough place differential that they become really, really good leverage plays. And allows you to end up playing a Christopher Bell, a Kyle Larson, and a William Byron all in the same group. Or Ryan Blaney in that group or whatever, but you could play 3 of those top dogs when you're running a $5,500 John Nemechek, $5,900 Shane Van Gisbergen, and a $6,500 Carson Hocevar. Or mix and match any of those 5 or 6 people that are kind of back here. Riley Herbst, another one who has a win at Vegas in the Xfinity Series recently. I think it was last 2023 in Xfinity race. He ended up finishing first. From Vegas, he finished 20th. Has not raced in the Cup Series here. But starting in 34th, I mean, his practice speeds were a little inconsistent, but you have to think this is the first time in a mile and a half in the Cup Series in this Toyota for 2311. He's not too far off. They're a little bit all over the place, but I mean, rookie season, first time on a bigger track. I'll give him a little bit of room to wiggle here with that. But starting in 34th, I mean, Riley Herbst easily could end up finishing 20th, and that's realistically all you need at that point. I trust Riley Herbst to go finish 20th almost as much as I trust Ryan Blaney to go finish 20th at this track. That's how much I don't trust Ryan Blaney to finish super well tomorrow. I'll have him because it's just kind of what you're supposed to do, but I will be underweight. And I'll probably be a little overweight on Riley Herbst. I'm sure he'll probably end up at about 6 or 7% ownership, maybe 8% ownership, because nobody's going to trust him. So, and maybe I'm dumb for trusting him, but I trusted more, or more willing to take a shot on that than I am Cole Custer, who I think also is an Xfinity win here at Vegas. Okay, I'd have to go back and look, but he's run pretty well in the Xfinity Series here. But he's got a 20th place average finish starting in 26. And his practice speeds were a little wonky too, so not great there. But starting in 26 or taking Riley Herbst starting in 34th, I'll take Riley Herbst in 34th. I'll gain the 8 spots of place differential if we think they both might finish 20th or 21st. Yeah, I'll take the Riley Herbst play. Ty Dillon is starting too far up for me. Average finish of 30.3. His practice speeds were definitely much slower than Ross's, and he was a little bit all over the board. And we don't have the soft option tire for him to get up front. So I think he ends up falling back. I think he's probably going to finish probably close to where his average finish is. And Cody Ware, starting in 35th, will probably finish in 36th, because after you see what his practice speeds were, oh boy, he barely crossed the 30 into the 29 range, and then immediately almost dropped back to 31.5. You want to just talk about a night and day difference on speeds. Wow. At this point, Cody Ware is looking at lap 12 or 14, and he'll be lapped. Yeah. Can we name a little chat group, the pit crew? I see the same guys in here every week, so it's a cool little name for people to join us on Saturday nights. Yeah, the pit crew. I like it. What we need to do is, like I said, I need to get the Discord up and running. I've been so busy with work and this, and I'm trying to refinish my attic space. Yeah, it's just been a crazy. Now we've got baseball season starting up with my son. I'll work on trying to get the Discord up and running. That way everybody can kind of join in. We can chat throughout the week, and I can share all these data points. All right, guys that I really, really like, and that the algorithm that I've created likes: William Byron, Ryan Blaney, Christopher Bell, Kyle Larson. Top 4 guys that I really, really like. Right behind that, Tyler Reddick, Denny Hamlin, Ross Chastain. I also really like the Carson Hocevar play, the Justin Haley play, SVG, Nemechek, Gregson. Guys that potentially could get us some points that they're starting up front. Out of this group, I really like the Kyle Busch play. Second to that, I like the Joey Logano play. Third, I like Alex Bowman. And fourth, I like Austin Cindric. Do not like the Ryan Preece, McDowell, Barry, or Eric Jones plays at all. Or Chris Buescher. Oh, you're welcome, Devin. I appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. I don't recognize the name, so either you don't chat a whole lot or you're first time here. And if you are, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. We're live most Saturday nights at about 9 o'clock, depending on lots of things. But my goal is to be online live at 9 o'clock. If the Xfinity race is running late, then it'll be 10 o'clock. And then if we have a late Sunday Cup race, I'll go live at about noon on Sundays. But either way, I appreciate everyone tuning in. We are at the tail end of this. I usually watch on replays so I can pause every time I want to make some notes. Oh, no, I definitely get that. And yeah. If you have any questions or thoughts or concerns, I appreciate everyone tuning in. And once again, if you're new here, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and share with anybody else you know that might be interested in NASCAR or Draftkings or betting. And I'm going to let you guys get off of here. It's been we've covered a lot of information. And at this point, what are we at? Hour and 40 minutes. So yeah, I've kept everyone's attention way longer than I thought I was going to tonight. But we had a lot of practice information, and I wanted to go through all the data points. So I appreciate everyone tuning in. We will see you next Saturday night at 9 o'clock. We race at Miami next week. I'm the person who's been saying this is the... Oh, yeah! I'm not used to seeing the name the way it is. Yeah, usually you comment afterwards. I'm glad you made it onto the live stream. Yeah, you had a rough week last week. So did I. And, that's part of it. Some of those weeks we have are not great, and some of the weeks we have are awesome. But that's the fun part of it. I like NASCAR in general, and the Draftkings is just an extra bonus. So, but either way, I'm going to get off of here. If anybody ends up hitting this week, definitely let me know. I always like to hear about the successes. And, sometimes we don't have the best weeks we want. But that's why we come back the following week and do it all over again. You won around $150 on MMA today. Nice! Good job. Hope you can keep going until tomorrow's race. Yeah, definitely. Turn that 150 into 400 or 500, maybe even more. So, all right, we'll see everybody next Saturday, and good luck tomorrow. Appreciate it. Bye.
Get a good deep breath. Get ready to roll here. Only about one thing tonight, getting the W, so got to be around at the end to do that. Get ready to roll tonight, boys. Let's go have some fun.
Don't get me any more fired up than I already am.
All the way to the checkered. You're fine. Nobody's got to run. Checker time, baby!
Hell yeah!
Proud of you there, Matt. Good job, pal. Thanks, man. Good job all day. Great work, my man. Great work.
Keep putting yourself in position, we'll win our share, right? We got one back today, brother. Good job.
10-4, great job, guys. Excellent work, my man. Excellent work. Thank you.
Man, that's awesome. Set out with a goal, we got it here, bud. Thank you very much.
Really proud of you, man. Drove your butt off tonight. We had the fastest car here, bud.
Probably killed our deal there. Just feel like I gave one away. Yeah, boys! Way to rebound! Great job!
Great job, bud. Really good job. Appreciate you hanging in there with us all weekend.
What a weekend. Good job. Thank you.